lecture series. Last time we talked, I mentioned, was talking about biohacking and the current trend that was coming out of Silicon Valley, and I mentioned about religion and technology. And I got some feedback from people about that, as they didn't quite understand the connection between that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that today to kind of expand on that idea. So I turned to the spokesman, ad hoc spokesman for that industry. His name is Yuval Noah Harari. And was listening to a few interviews that he gave, some talks that he gave to people at Google. And he, I guess, was kind of explaining to them even about this idea of a data-based religion. And so to expand on that a little bit, he talks about we're currently in liberalism, where man is the final authority, and we base our decisions on what we think and what we feel, what we want. But he believes that that will collapse, that we will come to an end to that, and we'll eventually transition to technology where data is the final authority. So that ends up being the basis, the final authority. That's why he considers it a religion. And he says basically that this technology is going to, this new coming high technology is going to be rendering human work obsolete, and that only technology can create or extend or interpret life's processes. Our biochemical algorithms is what he calls it, beyond our human capability to do so. So basically he's saying technology is going to eventually know us based on these biochemical algorithms better than we know ourselves. That's this major premise of his idea. And then he, interestingly though, he goes on to talk about this, their correlations between the biochemical and electrochemical situations and certain subjective experiences, but he does admit there's a hard problem of consciousness, i.e. technology is not living as such. It does not have a consciousness as such. And so that's kind of what they're working to reconcile right now. And then he finally maintains, he just concedes, he says maybe animals are not reducible to algorithms. So very interesting that he spends an hour building up and debunking liberalism and, by the way, religion, all traditional religions he just threw out right off the bat. And basically he said that they are categorically obsolete and that they've never contributed anything to technological advancements and were only used as a means to legitimize human law and norms. Yeah. Funny that at the end of his hour-long talk to Google, even Google atheists in the crowd, were pointing out the fallacy in that premise that he made right away. Nevertheless, let's continue. And he goes on to say that basically it doesn't even really matter, because he said, just like religion was dominant around the world, and since he's already said it's categorically irrelevant and untrue, but still dominated the world, he said likewise, this data-based religion will also dominate the world. But sleight of hand there. Truth doesn't necessarily have to factor in, is what he's saying. So, interesting, right? So the data that they're busy collecting and want to collect with all this technology may or may not have basis in reality or may not even be true. It has to be analyzed. These are a lot of shortcomings. So he's talking very, very interestingly, pushing something and then debunks himself. Anyway, let's continue. I came across an article in Forbes. This is about a year or so ago, but they were talking about the 7 different ways that technology, this high technology in the future, and we're talking very short time, anywhere between 10-15 years, different ways that they foresee this high technology, very practically now talking about inventions and the impact that it will have on society. So this religion, this idea, has very practical applications, is what we're seeing, in that people are pushing this data-based religion and very practical advancements and innovations. And so some of those will be augmentations to our body. So whether these are wearables they're talking about contact lenses that you can take pictures, or talking about earpieces that you can travel and listen to languages and it will interpret in your ear, right? Pretty handy stuff. They're also talking about exoskeleton suits to make you super strong. So that sounds pretty neat. But then we talk about implantables. So augmenting our body by putting brain microchips in. We've heard of that, the RFIDs, right? ID identifications, you put them in your hand, and so you wave your hand and you can get in. It's like a key, but it also is connected to your bank account. And you know, we don't have to look too far in the future for some of this, because that's the whole reason why we talked about China's social credit system. It's not implanted in them yet, but that idea of data collection through electronic whatever source, whether transactions or text messaging or pictures or what have you, is already being done through their cell phone, through their application like WeChat. So we don't need to look 10, 15 years down the road to see what some of these implications are. And already we can see that it's a giant surveillance tool, because everything you do is monitored. That's the whole point. Everything is monitored, and it's also calculatable, and it fits right into that whole database religion, that the data gets to tell the story. But is it the whole story? Well, obviously it isn't, because it doesn't even take into account that we're free agents, that we have a consciousness. So a lot of holes in this, but like Yuval has already pointed out, it could be, you know, the dominant thinking and it not necessarily be true because people want it to be true, or people can see the benefits. As I've mentioned, taking pictures with things that you wear, or earbuds, or, well, even they talk about BMIs, and these are brain-machine interface devices. So whether you wear them, there again, whether you wear them or you implant them, these would be microchips and technology to help you be smarter, say it plainly, or to help learn skills for job application, you know, for how you would apply on your job, how you could apply those skills. But it also is a recording of thoughts. That's one big thing that we see Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, he wants to record thoughts and making our thought processes more transferable. Okay, fine, but he's not the only one working on that. Elon Musk and his Neuralink is working on that, and same with DARPA. So very much, it's not just recording the information that we give you via text messaging or through wearable fitness devices or what have you, reading our minds. And so that's pretty invasive. It's also a question mark of how much autonomy you would have as a person, as a human being at that point. So interesting things, a very practical application to how this data religion is playing out. Some of the other things that we're noticing too is behavior. Right now in social media, a lot of social media, behavior modification techniques are very much in application. Same with video games. And the small little likes and all the little tricks, they seem very small. But in the big picture, they have a very big effect on people. And they can increase. The whole name of the game is to keep you engaged with their platform. And so these behavior modification techniques, they work. People are addicted to social media. They are addicted to video games. They very much have an effect on people. And there's also a chemical reaction quite often in the brain that the awards will stimulate a dopamine release in the brain. And so that's can be measured, right? If you have the right microchip in the brain, you can also measure these things. And so they can monitor how excited, how much reaction they can get. And that is what social media, in a lot of these programmings, they're embedded with the behavior modification techniques. So, yeah, when they start talking about on down the road, people being very influenced by these things, sure, in the way that we live, in the way that we think, in the way that we behave, they're absolutely right. A lot of this technology, and then if you even talk about the biological augmentation, now we're talking about gene editing. And gene editing has already been done. That was actually the university that I was at in China this past year. That was where the first two babies were gene edited at my university. So we don't need to look 10, 15 years down the road. This stuff is happening now, right now. And we can see the implications of it is that if you are picking out genomes or altering the human genome to create a more intelligent being, a special skill set, you're creating a stratification within humanity, in that some people will have job opportunities and they will have certain skill sets that will set them apart from others. And that ends up being a very economic issue, those who can afford the augmentations and those who can't. So a lot of implications here, and they're very practical because it's happening now. We don't need to look on down the road. We can look at China. We can look and see what they're researching, what they're doing, already in application. Like I mentioned, in 2020, the social credit system will be law. So we can know very quickly the effect that this type of technology has, and it's just not humane, because technology does not have a consciousness. It doesn't have empathy. It is black and white. And humanity, we're not built this way. That's not how we're created. So you can see that this new data-based religion, you have to think about it, because it really does have some strong implications in the practical, and it has some moral implications in the long run as well. So that's my short blurb for today. I thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to continuing this discussion with you in the future. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.